you that I love you.
Guys, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay.
Yeah,
دكتور
Yeah.
في صوت زنق في المايك بتاع حضرتك بعد إذنك بس لو هو جامد قوي كده راح تمام.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's from me. So can I ask you guys just to mute your voice? You hear me now?
كده تمام يا دكتور تمام.
تمام. Yeah. It was from your colleague. One from your colleagues.
تمام يا دكتور أنا آسف.
Yeah, no problem. Let's wait for a few minutes before we start.
دكتور لو سمحتي، هو في ناس بيحاولوا يدخلوا بس مش عارفين.
I really don't know what the problem is. I'm still admitting some people. And I left the option open just to, you can join in at any time in order not to restrict, your logging in.
Thank you, doctor.
No problem. So I'm waiting for one more minute.
يا شباب اعملوا ميوت بليز.
Yeah. Okay.
Doctor, do we have to write our full name or just my name and my second name for the
Yeah,
attendance?
your first and surname, and that's it.
Like it is the right now? Rujane Yasser
Yeah,
is-
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we were talking about the case selection and how can we design comparative research design. Can you remind me about the two methods we talked about last time?
Method of similarity
Yeah.
or method of difference.
Okay. More elaboration on this?
Method of difference, I think, from what I understand, is that we have, for example, comparing two cases or two countries, and they have similar, same characteristics or same.
This is method of difference, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
but at the end, the outcome is different.
Yeah. Okay.
And the opposite in the
reverse,
the
with the method of similarity. Okay. So I just want to introduce some concepts. You will learn more about them in your research methodology class, but this is very important because when I mention them, I just want to make sure that you understand the meaning behind these concepts. The thing is, you need guys, can you hear me?
We do hear you, though.
Yes. Yeah, okay. So basically, you need some sort of measurement. If you remember, we need to examine so far some sort of causality between two variables, X and Y, okay? Our independent variable that would explain the outcome, our dependent variable, right? When we talk about empirical theory, you need some sort of measurement. How can we measure these concepts? For example, like the intensity of the civil war, so the number of casualties, what kind of political parties, engaged in this fighting or in the battle. You need some indicators to measure or to capture your variable or your concept. So the measurement has to be valid. So you want to make sure that your measurement, how you measure the concept, is really valid. You really capture what you want to examine. Otherwise, if you have different measurement, or the measurement doesn't really capture the concept you wanna, or the variables under investigation, this would lead to what we call a spurious relationship. So it's not a robust relationship.
Doctor, sorry to interrupt, but there's some people, they need you to give them the access to enter.
Yeah, but the thing is, okay, but after 7 minutes, I'm not gonna accept.
They had a connection problem and they had a signal problem.
Okay. So it has to be like valid measurement in order to really capture the concept or the variable you need to you really need to examine, or to examine the effect on your outcome. So when we talk about the validity of the measurement, I'm going to explain this toward the end of this lecture. But for now, just I need you to understand that we need some sort of measurement. We need to capture the elements of the concepts or the variables we need to examine or we need to investigate. And the results, and this is very famous in quantitative methods, it can be kind of replicable. Like if you have your own measurement and the statistical analysis, you might you leave this or you keep this available for other researchers to replicate your results. And this needs some sort of rigorous operationalization. So when we talk about, for example, patriarchy, as I'm going to mention, so you need to capture the concept, or you need to come up with some sort of measurement or operationalization of the concept in order to examine or to investigate in the first place. For example, how many women held positions in government agencies or in the cabinet. This one sort of measurement that you can measure how this patriarchal structure would run deep into a specific political system or a specific social system. So you need some sort of indicators. You need to break down your concepts or variables into some elements to be measurable and really capture the concepts or the variables you need to examine, or the phenomena you need to examine.
Doctor?
Yeah?
I'm so sorry for interruption, but Sandra Khalid logged out because of internet problems, and she wants to log in again. Yes, Sandra Khalid.
Sandra? Okay.
Sandra Khalid, yes.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
There's a lot of people they can't join.
They cannot?
Yeah, they cannot join because there is a sign-up problem with the email and accessibility.
With their emails, right?
Yes, with their emails and accessibility.
I don't know, what can I do? Do you know their names? I have Salma Isam and Hala Wael. Okay, so let's continue. So the thing is, this is kind of guidepost or signpost how you can design your comparative research design, but there is no actually like a step-by-step kind of catalog or procedures you need to follow. You need to develop your own you need just to be aware of the methodological problems or flaws, and you need to have like these kind of guideposts in mind, and to develop your own skills in order to formulate your comparative research design. But I want to, as I mentioned, case selection is a very crucial step, because one of the readings, depending on the case you select, you will find the case you select will determine actually the results you will get. For example, if you want to examine the determinants of economic growth, and you measure this economic growth by GDP per capita, and you have your X variable, if the country really managed to repress or to discipline labor unions or labor, so labor repression is the key explanatory variable, so the country would achieve high economic growth defined by GDP per capita. And you need to apply this to South Asian countries. So this might be applicable, but if you see here the highlighted in yellow, Iran and Argentina, they have like high level of labor repression, and they didn't really achieve, high growth rates. So you may need to think about how the cases you select will define, the results you get. And this is your mission as comparativist. You might be interested in these cases like Argentina, for example, that it would give like, hard test to your theory. It might have like this conditions of high level of labor repression, but it didn't really achieve high economic growth rate. So you need to examine what kind of what other explanatory variable that would determine or would explain the results of the low economic growth. Imagine Venezuela here above, this kind of the semi-horizontal line. So it has like maybe low level of labor repression and high economic growth as well. So as a comparativist, you might be interested in studying, you know, these cases in order to refine the existing theories or to introduce new hypotheses to be tested. This is what I built on what I mentioned last lecture. So if you have you need to this kind of requires collecting, you know, some information and facts about different cases, and like knowing what's really the theoretical frameworks and the existing, you know, in the literature, the conceptual frameworks and theoretical frameworks existing in the literature in order to conduct your comparative research. So for example, if you have a theory, and you will study this in the week on democratization and democratic transition. So if you have a theory telling you, you know what, the crucial or the main explanatory variable in democratic transition is the division in the ruling elites between hardliners and softliners. Hardliners that they didn't need to introduce any sort of political reforms, and softliners that they did really need to introduce these political reforms. So with this kind of division between hardliners and softliners within the existing elite circle, they would align themselves, the softliners would align themselves with social movements or social reformists in order to introduce or to push for democratic transition. So if you have the theory and applicable in the vast majority of the Latin American countries, and then from your readings, you realized that it might be applicable to cases X and Y and B, A and B and C, but this kind of theory is not applicable to the case of Peru, for example. So you need to study this case in order to refine, to introduce new hypotheses or to refine the existing theories.
Doctor?
The thing is, you need to situate. Let me finish, and then I'll take your questions. So the thing is, you need to situate your research design or your case within the broader theoretical and conceptual concerns, or with the broader existing cases, in order to implement or to carry out your research. And you need as well, so besides, you know, these theoretical and conceptual concerns, this is what we are going to study in this course: rational choice, institutionalism, structuralism, culturalism, with different applications. You need also tools, and this is these tools you will study, or you will learn about, you know, these tools in your research methodology. So you need tools like interviews. You need tools, hard or soft tools, like ethnographic studies, participant observations. You need to live or to observe, you know, some sort of observations by some social or social actors or political actors in order to explain, you know, the social and economic phenomena. You need interview data, you need focus groups. All these are tools would help you investigate or to come up with this causal statement, or like X causes Y, or even to understand and to produce, you know, this kind of narrative analysis, as I'm going to say. Someone had a question?
Doctor,
Doctor, it's not.
the lecture is not recorded. I think you didn't.
Sorry?
You didn't enable the recording. It's not you are not
Please,
recording.
can you record this lecture?
Okay, yeah. I have it live on YouTube as well, and I'm recording on my iPhone. So don't worry about, you know, these few minutes. Okay. So imagine you need to study, you know, this patriarchy as a social phenomenon. Okay, everyone understands what patriarchy is, right? Like a male-dominated, you know, culture, or a male-dominated structure. Okay, so you need to investigate, you know, this issue, or this kind of social and political phenomenon. So before you do your research, you might have something going into your mind, or something like some ideas, floating around, your head. So first of all, I want to know if you really believe that there is kind of essential or real differences between men and women in all contexts and at all times, irrespective of like the time period, or developing countries or developed countries. So do you believe that there is kind of essential or real differences between men and women? Like, men are much more powerful than women. Like the power dynamics are always like, in favor of men. Do you believe in this? Anyone?
Yes.
Okay, so if you believe that there is kind of essential differences regarding race or gender or whatever, so you have this kind of, you do believe in the objective reality that really exists independent of your knowledge. So you might not know about, you don't know anything about, the power dynamics between men and women in academia in England or in the United States, but you have like this essentialized, notion about these differences between men and women, and this kind of power dynamics between like the men and women, that they are real, and the whole like these kind of relations, the whole true, regardless of the context or the time period. So perhaps like in the modern era, it's equal to like pre-modern era. You do believe in these kind of differences between men and women and in power dynamics. So you have these kind of differences represent the foundation upon which social life or political dynamics, would occur. So you have this what we call foundationalist. You're kind of foundationalist in your belief about, the existence of reality or the essence of the reality. So some of you guys might, contest or telling me, what? No, we don't believe in this. It's kind of it might be specific to particular context or particular culture. So you cannot like you cannot paint them. You cannot paint like industrial societies and agricultural societies with a broad brush. So there are kind of differences between contexts, and you need to examine the relationship between men and women, or the differences between men and women in these particular contexts, because they might have different other properties because of the existence of different culture, different meaning, different structure, different economic and social relations. So in your belief about this reality, so you are anti-foundationalist. So you believe that these kind of relationship between men and women are socially constructed, and it's kind of culturally and socially embedded or these kind of relations are embedded in particular discourse or particular culture. So you need to examine, you need to pay attention or to these nuances regarding to the meaning and the beliefs and the norms existing in different societies. So you are anti-foundationalist in this sense. Karma? Yeah?
ايوه يا دكتور. هو يارا طارق بس كان عندها مشكله في النت وطلعت ومش عارفه تدخل تاني.
I haven't got she didn't receive I didn't receive any kind of admission request from her. If I go, I'm gonna let her in.
Okay, doctor.
Okay, so this is you are foundationalist or anti-foundationalist with regard to the existence of objective reality. So if you do believe, if you are foundationalist, so you do believe that there is kind of you can like you can generate objective knowledge from these kind of essential differences existed in these social and political phenomena. And it also affects, from this belief, this will affect your perception about what can actually facts you can gather and how you gather the information about this. So if you believe that there is kind of, you can identify real and objective relationships, for example, between this patriarchy and economic activities, like for example, like industrial society or like oil-based economies, that they don't develop like this kind of wide or extensive industrial basis. So you have like too many housewives, they don't go to, or they are not integrated into the job market. So this actually would entrench or perpetuate, you know, this kind of patriarchy as a social phenomena. So if you believe you can make, you know, this kind of objective relationship between the two variables, and you can come up with, there is a pattern with this correlation or the relation between economic activities and social structure that would favor male dominance. If you believe in this, and you can come up with a general law, or you can understand different types of regularities, so you can, it will affect your tools as well. So you can develop this statistical techniques. Like you have like GDP per capita, the percentage of oil-based economy to the GDP. You need to examine the number of housewives, or the number of women that actually occupy a political position or work in NGOs or in the social sphere. So you can quantify, you can come up with this kind of measurable or quantifiable indicators that would capture these variables, and then you can, the quantitative methods, you can run like a statistical test or regression analysis in order to examine whether or not there is kind of a correlation between the economic activities and patriarchy, and then you can make, you know, this causal statement about patriarchy and economic activities. But if you don't really, if you are anti-foundationalist and you do believe in these kind of specific properties related to specific social and social structures, or cultural or different cultures, or different norms and values and beliefs, so you do believe that you cannot observe any kind of this kind of relationship between the structure, social structure, and the phenomena of the male dominated, you know, or the patriarchy in particular societies. So what you need to understand these norms and culture and behavior. So you might go in Saudi Arabia and you can live for some time in order to observe how actually women would accept, you know, some sort of submissive position to men. And you need to talk to them. Maybe they have this kind of, you know what, they do believe that they can drive their values from their husbands. So you need to understand the meaning, the meaning of the actors would assign to their behavior, why they behave the way they behave. So they might have like, they might have like norms and values like moral authority. This kind, they do believe, or they absorb, they are totally absorbed into this kind of vertical gender relations or power relations. So you need to understand the beliefs and the meaning of the actors, and what kind of beliefs and rules and norms would derive their submissive behavior. Or you might find, you know, a totally different, you can come up with, or you can observe, you know, different other behaviors or practices. So you can find, you know, women that they are really like rebellious, or they would contest, you know, this kind of patriarchal relationship, or this kind of male dominated culture in different ways. Like, you know, they need to drive their own cars, so they can like establish their own NGOs or social organizations in order to raise awareness about women's rights. So you need to develop your own tools that would help you understand these beliefs and norms and rules that would underpin different behaviors and different actions. Your belief about existence of objective reality, this is your ontological position. We call it the theory of existence or the theory of being. You believe in observable reality and objective reality, you're foundationalist in your ontological disposition, or anti-foundationalist. And this actually would affect your belief about what actually you can know about the relationship or the phenomenon. Observable, you can observe everything, or you can have unobservable properties you need to understand. So this would affect your belief about what you can, your perception or your belief about what you can know and how you can know. So if you believe that you can observe everything, so you can select, these kind of hard tools that would capture, these observable relationship. If you don't believe that, if you believe that there is kind of unobservable properties, so you need to kind of to lurk beneath, this kind of surface or this kind of relationship, the appearance of this kind of relationship between men and women. So you develop different tools like interview data, participant observation, ethnographic studies by living there in order to observe, the behavior and to understand the meaning and the belief of actors or agents, why they behave the way they behave. Okay, so this is the epistemological position. So the theory of knowledge, what can we know and how can we know this? Okay.
يارا طارق وروضة مراد يا دكتور عايزين يدخلوا مش عارفين، هم خرجوا عشان في بروبلم ودخلوا تاني مش عارفين يدخلوا. يارا طارق وروضة مراد.
I didn't get any request from them.
ازاي كل شوية بيبعتوا لي الصورة وهم مستنيين waiting، يعني مستنيين حضرتك تقبليهم.
Just wait. يارا طارق؟
ايوه يا دكتور. وروضة.
روضة مراد؟
بالظبط.
Okay.
Thank you دكتور.
Doctor,
Yeah?
Rahma sent a request to join us because she has a problem.
Okay. Guys, can you hear me?
Yes, doctor, we can.
Okay. So if you're on this kind of ontology and epistemology would determine, the way you perceive, the reality, and how can you collect, facts or information about your cases or the phenomenon under investigation. So they have like names regarding to this. So if you are positivist or behavioralist, so they use it, the literature uses this interchangeably, like connect this to our last week's lectures. If you believe that there is kind of a causality, you can come up with this general and causal statement about social and political phenomena, and you believe that there is kind of directly observed relationship between the two variables, so you are kind of behavioralist, okay, or positivist. And you need to use these kind of hard tools in order to investigate or to bear on your subjects or the issue under investigation. So because of this kind of criticism that, we need to there is kind of a dichotomy, it's kind of a philosophical debate between this dichotomy between reality or essence and appearance. Okay, so what you really observe, this is a genuine, or this is a reality, or there is something concealed or hidden you need to dig deeper in order to understand. So post-behavioralists, they are still behavioralist in essence, so they do believe in this causality, so you can come up with this causal statements about X and Y, you can understand this, but not everything we can directly observe. So we need to develop, you know, some other tools or to diversify our tools in order to know, you know, these kind of hidden structural properties or structural relations. And it's, as I mentioned, back to Saudi Arabia example, if you believe that no, it's not like that. It's not like, you know, a woman like unconditionally accepted, you know, their submissive position to men. There is something, and it's not related to the oil or extraction or this kind of rentier state. It has something, maybe some other like hidden properties in this kind of social structure I need to examine, and I need to understand and to explain. So if you believe that women as an agency would affect, would reflect on the existing structure, they had like some sort of beliefs that would guide their behavior, whether like, you know, submissive behavior or rebellious behavior. So you do believe that there are kind of hidden properties you need to discover. So besides these statistical and hard tools, I need to diversify my methodological tools in order to dig out or to understand the hidden properties of the existing structure. And this is related to, as the behavioralist or the positivist stand, it's this is the hardcore rational choice, but they actually accepted even some rational choice, as we are going to see. They accepted, you know, these kind of context specific ideas and stories, and they developed some sort of analytic narrative tools in order to understand how actors actually make their choices, how this rationality functions in different, you know, roles and different duty systems. So they can kind of thickening, they decided to strengthen or to enhance their analysis by developing or diversifying their tools in order to understand these kind of hidden properties. And this is kind of empirical theories, like that the main target is to examine this causality between X and Y and to understand the mechanisms. If you remember X and Y, A, B, and C, the causality chain we need to understand from this last lecture. So this is like behavioralist and post-behavioralist, they do believe in this causality. You can still come up with this law-like generalization about social and political phenomena, but another tradition, as we're going to see, that's why we are going to study culturalist as a school, you know, in comparative politics. They don't believe at all, despite, you know, there is no kind of a coherent camp between, you know, interpretists, but they do believe that there is kind of no objective knowledge. You cannot derive any objective knowledge through this kind of observable, through empirical tests or through your own observations. So you cannot come up with this causal explanation, because not everything is observable. There are some sort of beliefs, meanings, and rules that you cannot observe. So that's why you need to just to understand the meaning and the beliefs and the norms and the rules that would motivate, you know, political and social actors to behave in a certain way. And this is like a culturalist, and we are going to see how sociological institutionalists as well, they did believe in these, they actually hold this ontological and epistemological positions. And the history
دكتور
yeah
انا سوري اني اسفه والله، بس هي يارا ما تعملهاش اكسبت لسه تقريبا، يعني ما حدش دخلها لسه.
Okay.
Thank you يا دكتور.
So you have the theories we are going to examine. The proponents of these theories, they hold different ontological and epistemological positions, and you need to understand this in order to conduct a comparative research design. And there is kind of a dispute between these two poles. The behavioralist, on the one hand, that they do believe in this, and post-behavioralists, that they do believe in empirical science. this kind of causality and generalization in order to produce or to make these theoretical claims, okay? And then this narrative and storytelling of the interpretist or hermeneutics, they do believe in meaning and beliefs of actors in order not to come up with this generalization or causal explanation about social and economic political phenomena, but just to understand the narrative, to produce a narrative and to understand the stories of particular social and political actors. For example, back to the peasants' movements in Paraguay. So you do believe, if you believe that because of this kind of agricultural structure, that the economic structure is predominantly agricultural based, so that's why the main economic activity is agriculture. So that's why people they don't care. They have this sort of political apathy. Okay, so they don't care about political participation, and they have this kind of submissive like political culture or something like this. If you are behavioralist or foundationalist, so you can run a regression analysis or you can develop your statistical tools in order to understand this. Okay, if you are interpretist, so you see, you know what, no, I want to go there and I need to have some sort of participant observation or to conduct some interviews with the peasants in order to as a reflexive agency. So they have their own understanding why they have this submissive position, why they don't participate in politics. You might find out that, you know what, they don't believe in this political efficacy, so they do not have any sort of they cannot contribute to the political dynamics. So because the whole political regime is kind of dominated by oligarchical or a small elite circle. So it's not about submissive, for example, it's not about submissive culture, or they actually subjugating, this kind of submission or inferior position to the ruling elites or political elites, but they have totally different norms and understanding and meaning they would assign to this submissive or political non-participatory structure. So it depends on your, that's why it's very important to just to ask yourself first whether or not you believe in these kind of how the reality actually exists and your perception of this reality. It's kind of objective reality independent of your knowledge or your perception of it, or you do believe that everything is kind of socially constructed, so that's why you need to understand just meaning, beliefs and norms of political actors.
Doctor.
Yeah. Yeah.
دكتور لو سمحت، يا كارما السحت النت فاصل عندها ثانية وهي دخلت تاني على طول، فممكن حضرتك بس تدخليها كارما السحت.
Guys, I do understand that it's a nasty thing just to have like this kind of online teaching, okay? But please, like you have like, everything will be recorded, so please don't interrupt the lecture, okay? I do understand that like the internet connection here in Egypt is terrible and you can find, some technical problems, all the time. But the thing is, you cannot interrupt, the lecture just to get admitted, okay?
Doctor, I have a question.
Yeah.
For the example of Paraguay, you said from a few minutes.
Yeah. Yara's talking?
Yes.
Yeah.
I understand that it seems that they didn't participate in politics because they have their culture about agriculture. But when we look deeply in the process,
that, for example, okay, this is
we
like,
will see that they didn't participate in politics because there were an elite that dominate the political
system
what? Here.
They were what?
Group of people that dominate the political system here.
Yeah.
Is it right يعني ده كده الexample صح اللي أنا فهمته يعني.
Okay, so can anyone just summarize what I just said?
Summarize which part يا دكتور؟
Yeah, this kind of ontological and epistemological debates. Just imagine you are interested in particular social or political phenomenon. Okay, so tell me what are you interested in, and what path you are gonna follow if you are behavioralist or post-behavioralist or interpretist. Pick any issue or any phenomenon you need to investigate. You're really it's puzzling to you, and you need to understand or to come up with this kind of explanation, like what causes this phenomenon.
I think a behavioralist would
No. Pick a topic first, or a theme, like patriarchy. If you have something in mind really puzzling, and you need to understand what causes this, or to understand people's behavior, why they behave like that.
Okay, let's talk about labor movements.
Labor? Okay.
Labor movements.
Okay.
Okay, a behaviorist would take it for the science and statistics and talk about numbers and so. A post-behavioralist would look deeper in the issue and would think about social causes for and so on. And that's it, I believe.
Doctor,
Yeah.
can I tell you another example?
Okay.
مثلا ممكن study the behavior of the German after the Second World War مثلا.
What exactly? You have to be much more specific.
Okay.
Yeah, but this is another issue. You will learn in your methodology class. Your research problem has to be very specific and precise.
يعني the point that I will study it or research about it, that the behavior of the people, the citizens of German after the defeat
What
defeat of
exactly? What exactly in this behavior? The electoral one, or
the things that they الحاجات اللي هم مثلا بدأوا ان هم يخافوا منها، حاجات معينة في البيهيفير بتاعهم ما كانوش بيعملوها قبل كده. انا بس مش عارفة اقولها بالظبط يعني.
Okay, so let me they actually perhaps because of this legacy of instability, so they have become much more conservative, right, in their political choices.
منغلقين على نفسهم اكتر كشعب. بالظبط.
Okay. Yeah. So you need, if you are a behavioralist, so how can you approach this theme or this topic?
Okay, I can study the statistically speaking the clash اللي بيحصل ما بينهم وما بين الفورنرز اللي بيجوا الجيرماني مثلا، ان هم مش متقبلين ان هم يتعاملوا مع حد تاني.
Perhaps they might they have this kind of xenophobia, so they are not welcoming different cultures.
بالظبط.
Yeah.
بالظبط. Exactly.
So you do believe somehow in this kind of objective reality. So you can make this causality, you can observe this through their electoral choices. So they usually vote for right-wingers, and their relationships with the foreigners, or the acceptance of different cultures, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah, and then you can develop your own tools in order to examine this, like the electoral behavior. You have the data in order to interpret, to interpret this. Or post-behavioralists, they are still, it's relatable to the same causality thing, but you need to perhaps go and conduct this kind of interviews, or to have participant observation in order to understand how right wingers actually mobilize, or in order to observe their relationship or their behavior towards, you know, Syrian refugees, for example, or different other the Turkish, you know, community there, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. But if you are interpretist, you don't believe at all, you know, in this kind of causality, like X causes Y, and to come up with this general law, like, you know what, the legacy of the instability and this war heritage affected, you know, this kind of conservative behavior, or perhaps, you know, this sense of superiority and like racial superiority or something, they would affect, you know, this kind of belief in like, you know, that they are superior to different other culture, or conservative in their political choices. If you don't believe at all in this causality, what kind of in ontological position you would take, and then what can you know, and how can you know this? Interpretist, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Who is talking?
Malak.
Yara? Malak?
Malak.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So go ahead, Malak, if you do believe in this. Yeah, because I cannot, like, from like a few examples.
I will believe that if I'm an interpretist, I will not believe in any causal explanation. I will only, and I won't believe that there's observations. I think I'm going to examine the situation as a whole by myself. I'm going to make, like you said, the interviews to understand on my total responsibility, why these people took these actions or took this behavior. So I'm going to come up with a new idea or a new reason behind this.
Yeah, it's a little bit tricky because they need to understand. So they don't have, you know, this causal explanation. Okay. Yeah. So it's still like you study the exact or the same, you know, social and political phenomenon. But the thing is, here, you do not believe in this kind of causality, like X causes Y. You just go there, and from people's reflections, from German people's reflections on this behavior, how they, whether or not, you know, they accept, you know, this kind of, they are open to different cultures, or like they would accept like, you know, this like Syrian refugees, and the state would have kind of a responsibility towards, you know, offering them or providing them with social services and public goods. So you need to go there and understand this without, like, you know, having any sort of causality. You need to, without kind of, the main target is not to come up with this causal assertions or causal claims. So you might find, you know what, they have totally different culture about work culture. So people, like, they don't work, or unemployed work, they don't deserve any kind of subsidies. Okay, so you use people's meaning and reflections and beliefs in order to understand. Okay, rather than running regression or coming up with this causal relationship between both of them. So you cannot make any kind of causal claim about this legacy or racial supremacy or something. You just want to understand the meaning people assign to this behavior, the underpinning values and norms, you know, that would motivate them to behave like that. Okay. Yeah, I'm asking. I just want to make sure that we are on the same page.
Yeah, Dr. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So even within, you know, this interpretist traditions, they are not a coherent camp. Okay. I'm saying that because here in our course, we will focus only on some sort of rigorous, you know, tradition within, you know, this kind of interpretist camps. Okay. The actually, you know, this tradition has come into for some sort of criticism because they have their own subjective understanding of the world. Okay, if you don't believe in this kind of objectivity and impartiality and everything is socially constructed and you need to understand people's meanings and beliefs, so how can I know? Because of the central issue here, to make it scientific, or the scientific theory, you need to have kind of tools that would tell you when you go wrong, whether or not, you know, this relationship or this causality is robust or spurious. Okay, so if you have this subjective understanding of the world or the structure, how can you know that you are wrong? Okay, it's still subjective. Okay, so that's why some groups, some of this kind of hermeneutics traditions or interpretists, so they seek, or they mention that by studying like sociological, you know, institutionalist or normative institutionalist, for example. So they aim at kind of producing some sort of generalizable interpretation or understanding of a particular behavior. So if they say that, you know what, institutional rules that are socially constructed, like here in Egypt, we have this kind of institution that we have, like, people who are older than you have to respect. Okay, so you don't have a chance or ability to contest or to oppose their behavior. Okay, so this is kind of like cultural norms, and you cannot kind of breach, or if you are kind of breaching, you know, this boundary, you would be in trouble. Okay, so if they mention, like, in a general terms, like these kind of institutional rules and socially constructed rules would constrain or would actually impose some sort of constraints on people's behavior. So this kind of generalizable understanding about how specific social rules and social norms would affect people's behavior and agency and people's actions. So, but instead of like conducting this kind of empirical test, there is kind of like a shared criteria between us as a scholarly community, that we can how can we understand, or what would how these, you know, practices and traditions and narratives are produced. Because we have this kind of common agreement or agreed facts, so it's kind of, they call it self-referential. So if I conduct interviews with women in Delta, for example, because I do need to understand how they treat, you know, their husbands, okay? Or I need to understand marriage as an institution, okay? And how this would affect political participation or engagement in civil society activities, like signing petitions, attending, you know, some public lectures or whatever. So I go there and I need to understand as interpretist, okay? I don't want to make any sort of causal claims, but I need to understand these traditions and practices and narratives, and the meaning I assign to their what they are going to tell me. I'm gonna make, you know, this available to other researchers, but it's not empirical test, but it's kind of, it's still available in order to reconstruct the meaning. So it has, so I'm not going there to see, like, you know, what they cook or at what time, you know, they go to bed. It's kind of, I ask particular questions that would help me get some information and produce knowledge from these traditions and practices. So I would answer, you know, if your husband, you know, would help you out in laundry or domestic work as well. So I can ask these kind of questions in order to understand how the meaning, you know, they would assign to this. Maybe like a wife would tell me, you know what, it's my job, it's not his job, because he usually spends, you know, all the day, you know, outside working in order to provide, you know, for the family. So this is her perception about, you know, the positionality or the position of the men and women in this marriage as an institution. And the narratives, this kind of narratives, you know, I came up with, it would be available, you know, for other researchers, and it could be reconstructed and consistent with the data. The narrative I produced, it's consistent with the data that I can make, you know, this data available to other interpreters that would have like this kind of agreed criteria on how to produce and how to reconstruct the meaning of these narratives, practices, and traditions. So it's still rigorous in a sense. But some others, they don't believe at all. They are affected. I can go in some detail or explain this in some detail in the very last week, but for now, just take it as it is. Because of the effect of postmodernism or as a tradition in political theory or as a philosophical trend as well. For postmodernism, you cannot drive any kind of rationality grounded in these practices and narratives. But some interpreters actually contest, you know, this like this notion or postmodernist notion about rationality. No, I can find some sort of grounded rationality in these practices and traditions and narratives, because they have, like actors, they have their own reflection on like a structure or institutions, as a marriage or as like economic structure in Saudi Arabia, for example. So they might have their own reflection and understanding, and they would affect in a way or another the endurance or the collapse of this kind of social and political practices. So I can develop still rigorous research design. You can find rigorous research design within, you know, this interpretist camps, and it gained some sort of but generally speaking, the effect of postmodernism and like on political science, it's a little bit mild if you compare this to sociology, for example, or literature. So in political science, it's still it's not that these kind of traditions do not run deep. So that's why you can find still like interpreters that would aim at understanding in a generalizable terms and developing this kind of rigorous research design as well. And for the Massey Center, you know, article, the World Politics article I assigned as a recommended reading in week 1, they mentioned, you know, this kind of like this kind of disputes between the hard science and it's not hard, like the position of of rational choice in political science, and culturalist or constructivist, that they believe that everything is socially constructed. Okay, so perhaps like people like were indoctrinated into, you know, these kind of submissive position, like men, like women or wives, you know, they had to abide by or to conform to what husbands, you know, would say. So this kind of a norms and as an institutional norm and would affect people's beliefs and people's behavior. And it's not observable, it's constructed. So you need to develop your own tools to understand. So positivism as a philosophical trend actually got affected as well by some sort of criticism, and they had to accommodate some of these critiques by developing or diversifying their own tools, because they do this kind of like a strict belief in separation between like the existence of objective reality and the only viable or valuable knowledge would only driven from empirical experience. This idea has come into for some sort of criticism, even, you know, for positivists. So that's why you will find, you know, this disputes between the two camps, the interpretist or culturalist and constructivist, and rational choice or positivist or behavioralist. Okay, and there are some other, like, you know, intellectual efforts or some sort of middle ground, you know, schools or theoretical frameworks, you know, were developed in order to straddle, you know, this kind of division between constructivism and rational choice. And that's why political science or comparative politics would be placed in this kind of Massey Center and diversification of methodological tools. So you can place yourself somewhere in between, you know, like post-behavioralist. So they still believe in causality, but they can use some tools used by interpretists, okay? So there is kind of a messy center still, no pole would have the ability to dominate neither the rational choice, the proponents of rational choice, or proponents of cultural and constructive, the constructivist or proponent advocates of constructivism. Okay, I will say this, but I'll go back again, you know, to this in our last week. So here, for example, this kind of anti-foundationalist stand in political science and in comparative politics, as this is our subject. Some other, like, you know, this kind of philosophical trends and some other intellectual movements actually affected, you know, moving from this kind of a strict and firm foundationalist position to somehow anti-foundationalist position. Okay, if I tell you, like, what's the difference, try to guess what's the difference between empirical theory and normative theory. Can you tell me?
I think empirical theory, it depends more on the experiments and the observation. But the normative or normative theory, it depends more about the habits and the customs of the society.
Okay. Any more guesses here? Anyone try to guess?
Doctor,
yeah?
I think that I think that normative theories are based on empirical assumptions and evaluations.
So I think you want to say you study what's already there, what is,
yes,
you know, political order, right?
Yes.
But normative theory would be interested in, theorists would be interested in how like, you know, how to make it better, you know, how political system ought to function or ought to operate instead of how it functions already.
Yes.
Okay. Actually, it lost this kind of normative thinking, or you will study this in your, there is kind of, guys, there is no separation between like comparative politics and political theory and political thought, okay? Because some sort of like intellectual movements and philosophical debates affected, you know, political science as well, okay? So it's this kind of normative theory, it's pretty much related to this kind of philosophical discussions about how best life, you know, would look like, how best political, and you can find this in Plato and Aristotle's writings, okay? So you can derive, you know, some kind of normative theoretical and normative claims from these kind of philosophical works. So some normative theory, they were influenced by this kind of philosophical writings, and they did care about studying how political order, or how politicals, instead of how they actually and effectively functions, so how they ought to, or what kind of, how can we make it better? How can we make political life and political order functions better? It lost its ground with this positivist understanding, or like positivism as an intellectual movement, and then with this kind of predominant position of positivism, especially in the throughout, you know, the 50s and the 60s, it was kind of a retreat in this kind of normative understanding, or making these normative claims, or vocalizing your anti-foundationalist position. But what happened after, you know, this kind of, after like positivism as a school or as a philosophical or intellectual movement, or proponents, they were harshly criticized. So they started, you know, some beliefs in these kind of anti-foundationalist and normative political theories, they started to surface again. and it's related somehow to what's called linguistic turn in the 70s, okay, in the 70s, that led to a shift, you know, of the normative theory from foundationalist to anti-foundationalist. The initial works of normative theory, they did share with the positivism as a school, or as a movement, as an intellectual movement, that there is kind of metaphysical absolute truth existed there. So, but you are foundationalist in a way that there is, by believing in this kind of ultimate or absolute, the existence of this kind of objective, you know, metaphysical reality beyond appearance. Okay, so they shared somehow some foundationalist properties or position with the positivism. This kind of accommodationist stand shifted, you know, in the 70s, and they started, you know, to talk about, you know what, the meaning is socially constructed, and even, you know, the elements of the language is separated from the actual experience of individuals or agents, and actually it constitutes the experience rather than mapping, you know, this language onto experiential existing experiences or lived experiences by individuals. So the main target, just as anti-foundationalist, we need to understand this kind of different worldviews or different beliefs actors and agents held. And this actually resonated with some efforts, intellectual efforts in political science, by developing this interpretive tradition and how to understand how institutional rules and beliefs and behaviors, institutional norms and rules and meaning people would assign to this would affect their actions and behavior in a political and social sense. So let me give you another example, and hopefully you can understand this. If you need to understand why people vote for autocrats. So first of all, in Mexico, for example, they had like one dominant party system for 7 decades, and people used to vote for the one dominant party system for 7 decades. And you need to understand this electoral behavior. Okay, why people vote for autocrats? If they have elections and they have, if they actually face different options and different choices, why they would choose, what they would go for the autocratic option. Okay, if you are foundationalist, you do believe in this kind of, there is no kind of, when people cast a vote for the dominant party or for the autocratic leader, so this is reality, okay? And there is no separation between this reality, the appearance, and the actual reality. What you see is the reality and it's objective, okay? So you need to develop, to make up, you need to come up with this kind of causal claim by saying, you know what? Yeah, because the dominant party monopolized, you know, or had a monopoly over state resources, and it actually, the party embedded, you know, these voters and actors into wide patronage network, meaning in order to make use of the benefits the party distributes, so you need to cast a vote for the party's candidates. So rationally speaking, so people made their own calculations in order to benefit from the public goods or the provision of this kind of public, not public goods, like this kind of peculiar or particular distribution of material benefits. So you need to vote for them, otherwise you will be deprived of these material benefits. So as a rational actor, so they made a rational calculation and they made a rational choice, okay? And you can run a regression or to make use of the survey data to come up with this causality, like, you know, the distribution of material benefits and the pattern of voting for the PRIs or the one dominant party candidate. Okay, but if you are a post-behavioralist, you know what? No, I do need to understand this is not. It's not all about what I observe. So I need to understand some hidden properties in this structure as well. So in addition to studying vote buying or the behavior of the political candidates in buying votes. So you deploy some other tools, methodological tools, to investigate the manipulative discourse. Okay, how the media actually framed the candidates of the pre or the dominant party. So the dominant party or the ruling party had, instead of or in addition to, they are not mutually exclusive. Like vote buying is there, but like manipulative discourse as well. So you need to examine or to analyze media discourse during or the electoral campaigns, or the time allocated for political opposition to present their political platform. So you diversify your tools in order to understand some sort of hidden facts or hidden structural properties you cannot observe by only people like going to the polling station in order to cast a vote for this or that political candidate. Or as interpretists, so you just, you know what, you go there. I don't care about, you know, this causality like manipulative discourse or vote buying, patronage, and voting for autocrats. I do care more about the meaning and beliefs and the meaning voters would assign to their votes. So I need to ask them how, I need to know how they actually reflect on their voting behavior. Why you guys vote, you know, for priest candidates in the last like 10 years or 12 years? Why do you vote for the dominant party? And from their language and from their like the way they narrate, the way they tell their own stories, so you can understand how like this kind of moral, the development of this kind of moral authority or compliance to for example, the compliance to the authority of the political leadership is essential to understand this. Or perhaps you can find, you know what, this is the only like clever political elites that they can run the country. They have control over resources, and they are the only one that they can have like this by staying in power for like decades. They developed some sort of political skills to govern and to rule the country, and political opposition to run the country. So you need to understand why they vote for them, and you can come up with different kind of narratives from what they actually, from what people actually believe, and how they actually behave or select or from people's choices, and the meaning they would assign to these choices, and the rules and the norms that would stimulate them to behave or to vote for autocratic leaders. Okay. From this debate about behavioralism, post-behavioralism, or positivism and post-positivism, and interpretist or hermeneutics in political science. So we will, from next week onwards, we are going to talk about three major schools, or like the umbrella in comparative politics. Rational choice, they represent, you know, this hardcore behavioralist position or positivist position. And then culturalist, they represent, you know, these interpretist traditions, and some sort in between, like structuralism, how they can gather or and draw together, you know, some elements, and then neo-institutionalism as hybrid tradition. It actually entails the three traditions. So we can speak of rational choice, institutionalism, sociological, as it actually corresponds to rational choice, and a sociological or normative neo-institutionalism that corresponds to culturalist tradition, and then historical institutionalism that actually brings together actors' choices and structural properties, and how this would affect particular outcomes. And the main goal of the course, it's not to resolve, you know, these disputes between different schools in or different theories or different theoretical schools and ontological and epistemological positions in political science or in comparative politics, but actually just to be aware of the existence of these schools and the main flaws and drawbacks and critiques of every single school. And then you can come up with this kind of possibility of synthesizing between different traditions, and you will see how like the majority of political scientists or like they are actually open to different methodological tools. They are not limited to particular like, you know, quantitative or qualitative methods. Mixed methods, you know, would be like it actually emanated from this kind of dichotomous position or methodological position, and you can find some literature speaks to this kind of the merits of using or diversifying your methodological tools. And just to know the terminology, and this kind of, you can find both like hagiographic studies that focused on only context, meaning, and culture, or nomothetic, this kind of law-like generalization that studies that they do believe in this kind of causality and generalization in your causal assertions or causal claims. So there is no kind of a default setting. You can find all traditions are there in political science, and from these theories and you need these theories and concepts to understand or to undertake your comparative politics, and to would help you to, after you select your cases and you have your research puzzle or your research problem, this kind of theoretical devices would help you analyze and explain and perhaps come up with this kind of theoretical claims or refine some sort of existing theoretical assertions. So so don't worry, we will be talking about, you know, all these kind of disputes and contestation between different theoretical schools, and I'll be back again, you know, to this eclectic, you know, messy center idea, and this kind of what makes it how it takes, you know, to make it, you know, a scientific knowledge, or what does it mean, you know, to have like, you know, a science and methodology in political science, and mainly in comparative politics, in the last week after we finish, you know, this course. And hopefully you will finish as well your research methodology course, so things, you know, will get much clearer than now. So you will get like grasp. You can grapple with this kind of big picture in political science and comparative politics in specific. Okay, so next time we will start. So we will start talking about our, like, you know, theoretical schools. So a week for rational choice, another week for culturalism, and a week for structuralism, and then so over like the next 4 weeks, we will cover the 3 schools and the neo-institutionalism as a hybrid tradition that actually draws together these theoretical elements into, you know, this all-encompassing, you know, neo-institutional tradition or a label. Okay. Any question, guys?
Yes, Doctor.
Yeah, Farida.
The word patriarchy, it means that it main dominant issue in a specific country.
If you need to examine this, if you are interpretist, you need to understand this in a context specific format, okay? But if you believe that there is kind of objective reality regardless of the context, or regardless of the time period, so you believe in this kind of essential foundation or essential differences between men and women, so you are kind of foundationalist, so you have a totally different orientation or totally different epistemological position as well. What kind of tools and how can you know about it? So you can generalize about this.
It's all about objective reality.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Objective reality, and if you can observe this in totality, if you cannot observe, if you can observe but not in totality as post-behavioralist, so you can still make, you know, this kind of causal statement, but to diversify your tools in order to dig out the roots, or the hidden properties in the structure.
Okay, in the first slide in the lecture,
first one,
the point validity can validate
Yeah.
أيوة اللي هي robust and
robust and
superior.
spurious.
Yes,
Yeah.
what the meaning of the two
I'll
words.
talk about robust in Arabic. You mean the translation? Spurious, that there is no real relationship between the two variables. Okay, robust, it holds across. It's a genuine or some sort of like real relationship between the two variables.
Between the two. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, but this is like, I'll talk more about this in the last week after you finish your research methodology. But for now, I just want to make you like, I just want to make sure that you can understand that there is kind of measurement of the variables. We need to operationalize, our variables, and these kind of measurements have to be valid in a way that it really captures the concept you need to examine. Okay.
Okay.
Any more questions, guys? Yeah, okay, so next week we will start with our theoretical or our theories in comparative politics, and we will start out with rational choice. Okay, we have office hours right after the lecture, so I'll send a Zoom link after the lecture, and I have one appointment so far in a few minutes, in 10 minutes or something. Okay, so if you want to make you can actually join the meeting, but yeah, I prefer just to receive emails to give you specific time slots. Okay. Yeah, okay guys, yeah, see you next week. Bye.
Thank you.